honest teachers in the meditation tradition say that it's basically just been going on for thousands of years. There'll be a beautiful meditation school, and at some point the power mongers take over and make it overly complicated and baroque so they can dominate and control. What we really need is like a lesbian psychiatrist who's also a dominatrix and a scholar to do a breakdown and an analysis of this whole guru model that we've gotten and identify it. Because if your meditation teacher is really a dominatrix, there's no safe words.
Yeah.
You feel like they've got a hold of your inner life.
Yeah.
And teachers just fall into this. It might be better and cheaper just to hire a profession. Just search around and find a really good dominatrix and just pay them, because they're probably ethical and they have a safe word, and they're working according to a code of ethics. Whereas spiritual teachers really, like, they aren't. They fall into being a dominatrix, and they're teaching domination subjection.
Yeah.
And it's really expensive. You can lose 10 years of your life being around a toxic teacher.
I have back one of my dear friends and sources of inspiration, the beautiful meditation teacher, Lorin Roche. I have interviewed him a few times on my YouTube channel, and he is just such a source of wisdom, light, radiance. He's the author of the book, The Radiant Sutras, a beautiful translation of the Vajrayana Bhairava, or poems inspired by that tantric text. So Lorin, welcome back, my dear sir.
Thanks. You know, one thing I noticed, before my meditation teacher training, I loaned my car to one of my brothers, and all I had was a suitcase with some clothes in it. And I was just gone doing yoga and meditating and doing body work and different kinds of therapy training for years. And I went kind of overboard. Like for years, I was just living with basically almost nothing, just barely enough clothes for a week. And toothbrush. I carried away with the minimalism. Yeah, like a monk-like state. But we can live simply. But it's really important thing to feel into.
Yeah. When I lived in an ashram for a number of years, and similarly, it was what possessions can I fit into my small room, which was pretty minimal. There's a freedom in that. There's a freedom of realizing that we are not our physical objects, we're not our clothes, we're not the things we own. But on the other side of things, this life is to be enjoyed. There is nothing wrong with having physical possessions and enjoying a physical life, an embodied life. It's part of why we came here, is to enjoy those things.
Yeah, that's right. There is a whole skill set to handling it. Because as you know, like there's cables. There's a lot of cables in our world. And having the right cables, you have to bring quite a few cables, all the different fittings.
Yeah.
It adds up, having enough cables to fit.
I know we joke about how difficult it is to travel nowadays because of all the things you have to remember to bring, like the 20 different cables that you need to just
20 different cables.
Manage your life. I miss the days when you could just grab your toothbrush and go.
Yeah. So in meditation, to access our inner world, how many cables do we need? I mean, that's sort of the question for thousands of years. It's like, what techniques do I need? And one of the wild things about meditation, it turns out that Buddha said one day, hey, monks, I've given you 84,000 different Dharma doors. That's the phrase he supposedly used, which is a great term, the doorways or passages into communion with the soul. And having taught meditation for like 56 years now, it kind of feels like, there's probably 84,000 different kinds of people. I've worked quite intimately with thousands of people over the last half century. I'll listen to somebody for a couple hours. I'll let them tell me about themselves and what they love. And I'll construct a practice kind of out of their inner life, out of what they love. And it'll resemble one of the classical meditation practices. And it's built around their natural flow. And so I listen to people tell me about what they love and when do they feel at home in their bodies? When do they feel at home in the world? When do they feel ecstatic? When do they feel thrilled to be alive? And as I'm listening, I feel like I'm being taught something essential
Mm.
and important. And I wouldn't want to give it up. Like somebody describing the way they interact with their horse and their horse's personality and a particular ride they went, or somebody talking about kneeling in their garden or holding the baby or holding a guitar and having a song come to them, wandering in nature, taking ayahuasca in the Amazon, dancing, standing on a mountaintop, coming up from free diving, coming up to the surface, or being under the surface and looking up at the ocean where the ocean meets the sky. As I'm listening to people, I feel like I'm being alerted to something profound that I also
Mm.
know. And so listening to people and getting to know them, I feel like each person has already had some version of an enlightenment experience
Mm.
where they're at one with the life force. And their pathway in meditation is to build on that. And when people realize and set out on the path of letting meditation feel like what they love in this adventure of being vital, living human beings, then meditation becomes as natural as breathing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an elusive skill at the same time that it's simple because we can lose it. Like I started that way in 1968. I was like a loner surfer and in college, and I was working. I'd mow the greens on a local golf course, starting around 5 in the morning. I'd have to start an hour before dawn. So I'd be up early, and then on days I didn't work, I'd go surfing at dawn. So it so happened that I was in a science experiment where they paid me to sit in a pitch black room for 3 hours a day in the afternoons, just measuring my brain waves. And I'd actually never heard of meditation and had nothing, I had no instructions in my head. And so I was in this pitch black room, totally silent. And the only thing I knew how to do was from a lifetime of surfing. We used to surf without wetsuits. The wetsuits in the 50s and 60s were horrible. Like you could barely move in them.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd be surfing. And here in Southern California, the water is almost always cold and would come in and couldn't feel our feet. It would be so cold. We'd only come in when we are getting close to hypothermia and would just lie in the sand and warm up. So that's probably the thing I knew how to do that helped me in this science experiment because I would go in every day for a couple of weeks and just be there for hours in pitch black. And what I learned to do as a surfer, is just lie there and just sink into the sand because the sand would almost always have some warmth in it. And so in a way, I was meditating on gravity, relationship of the body
Mm.
and gravity. But it's a sweet feeling of floating when you totally surrender to gravity, just let gravity pull you into the earth. Maybe I instinctively had that going for me, like a bodily skill of accepting the embrace of gravity,
Mm-hmm.
where you let yourself fall when you come. Especially if you're lying down or you're in a comfortable chair, you can let go into gravity. And after a while, the gravity turns to levity.
Mm-hmm.
It turns to floating, feels like floating. So I think my body knew that from growing up surfing. But other than that, I had no idea what meditation was. I'd never heard of it. I just went really, really deep. And it was only a couple months later that someone read part of the Vijnana Bhairava, this first English translation that was done by Lakshman Ju and Paul Rebs. And at every word of it, sort of flashed in my awareness like, oh, whoever wrote that knew the state that I experienced just sitting in pitch black every day for weeks. And it'd be harder to arrange today because we've all heard all of these things about meditation and what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Nowadays, when I'm teaching, a lot of people have already mentally failed so many times, they have to go through this whole unlearning process. Because sometimes I'll hear a couple times a day, person will go like this. Well, I tried to meditate, but I couldn't stop thoughts.
Yeah.
And they've already learned to attack themselves.
Yeah.
It hurts. It hurts
Yeah.
to even do that. They've learned to shame themselves for not being able to stop thinking, which is not only impossible, but it wouldn't be good if it was possible.
There is such a cultural misinterpretation about what you're supposed to achieve in meditation. I think a lot of people have the image of the stoic, maybe Zen meditator sitting perfectly still, staring at a blank wall, having absolutely no thoughts whatsoever. And similar, I hear so many people say, well, I just can't let my mind sit still. And I say, well, what are you doing during meditation? Oh, nothing. I'm just trying not to think. Well, of course you're going to fail. Of course you're going
Yeah.
to fail.
There's a partial truth to it in that it happens sometimes, but that's not how you get there. Like for me, I had weeks of just sitting in pitch black and silence with no instructions at all. I just got to fall through into space. Then I encountered the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra with this 112 doorways with breathing, then energy flows in the body and letting your mind wander, rocking out to music, dancing, the rapture of music itself. What music just carries you away, wandering in nature, being afraid, being overpowered by lust, love, adoration, longing, loneliness, getting exhausted and then lying down, the whole range of experiences. And so I just learned to flow with the energies of life. And so if we're going to say one sentence that's true of most of the world of meditation, what it really is, it's savoring the thrill of aliveness. It's giving a few moments to letting my attention be just thrilled with the current of electricity that is a body, that is what it is to be embodied. And our bodies are actually always in communion with the larger universe, always.
Yes.
Gravity is always giving us a place to stand or sit or lie down or dance. We don't float off into space like people in orbit, people in a space station. If they go outside the space station without an umbilical cord, they could just float up. We don't float off into space. So gravity is holding us. There's a continuous flow of air in and out of the body. And air, this air that we're breathing is actually our primary food. Air is usually invisible and quite light, so we can move through it. But if you look at a plane from a distance, like a huge plane that weighing many tons, looks like it's floating.
Yeah.
Because air is quite thick when you put out wings. So this substance of air is actually our primary fuel and our food. So, and air is the whole world. It's one atmosphere surrounding this. So we're continually exchanging vital substance, this perfect mixture of oxygen with the entire earth, noticing that, oh, I am intimately related to this whole planet continuously. It's a big deal. It's the simplest thing in the world. Like, oh, I'm alive. And actually, this is the essence of meditation, is spending a few minutes a day at least in this realization, like, oh, I'm here. I'm alive. I'm awake.
Yeah.
I'm being fed continuously, supported and maintained by this entire solar system. Because the sun shining on the oceans of the world and all the forests and grasses and lakes, it's continually renewing my oxygen supply. And all the plants are not only giving me oxygen, but they're synthesizing food out of sunlight and carbon. So everything keeping me alive is a gift from this larger universe. So meditation is delighting in this.
Do you feel like part of the reason people struggle to, as you said it so beautifully, savor the experience of living is we've seen a lot of both religious traditions and even different meditative traditions, a very strong bent towards dualism and renunciation, this idea that God is somehow out here, this human experience is somehow less than divine, so we need to move out of our experience and into a divine experience. Do you feel like that's tied to it at all?
Well, yeah, apparently it's been going on forever in the meditation traditions. There's many traditions, and the honest people say, well, like Like I'm okay. I'm okay. Because the real truth is, if you tell people the truth about meditation, a lot of them will go, thanks, I get it. And they'll just go off and live. They'll come back once in a while and check in, but they
Yeah.
don't need you anymore. They're not dependent upon you. And the temptation for all teachers is to create dependency because basically it's like air. The meditation teachings, the secrets of meditation are like air. It's like, well, we're all breathing. And so
Yeah.
the highest meditation technique, is just to enjoy your breathing and
Yep.
be in a process of discovery about the miracle of breath. But if you want to, if you're evil, you can hypnotize people and say, well, I'm in charge of breath.
Yeah.
I'm the God of breath. And without me, you can't breathe freely.
Yeah.
So that's the temptation for all teachers. Everybody gets tempted. And so what happens is that at meditation schools will rock along and they'll be rejoicing in freedom. But at some point, people realize, we would make so much more money if we taught fear instead of love, and if
Yeah.
we taught control and subjugation instead of freedom. So they take over. So the usual rule is that the schools lose their groove and become realms of domination and submission. People that the dominatrix model, where
Yeah.
they've got a whip or there's a paddle to spank you with. So there's somebody sitting on a throne lording it over, and there's people groveling.
Yeah. I've been there.
Yeah.
Been there.
And so 20 years ago, I was teaching at somewhere like Kripalu, and I said, what we really need is like a lesbian psychiatrist who's also a dominatrix and a scholar to like do a breakdown and a takedown and analysis of this whole guru model that we've gotten and identify it. Because if your meditation teacher is really a dominatrix, I don't know what the male version of it is. There's no safe words.
Yeah.
You feel like they've got a hold of your inner life.
Yeah.
And teachers just fall into this, and students. So I said, if you feel like you have those tendencies, it might be better and cheaper just to hire a professional. Just search around and find a really good dominatrix and just pay them, because they're probably ethical and they
Yeah.
have a safe word, and they're working according to a code of ethics. Whereas spiritual teachers really, like, they aren't. They fall into being a dominatrix, and they're teaching domination, subjection,
Yeah.
and it's really expensive. You can lose 10 years of your life being around a toxic teacher.
Yeah. I mean, that was definitely my experience where you don't realize that that's what you've signed up for, but you find yourself in that relationship and there is no safe word. There is no safe way out.
Now, what happened to you? Tell me about your experience with this.
I was 19 years old, 20 years old. I was in college and was seeking because, as you said, meditation is the most natural thing. I can remember as a kid being 7 years old, sitting at my desk in school and just suddenly becoming so vibrantly aware of my breath.
Wow.
And suddenly colors just started swirling around me and started to have this almost orgasmic experience and feeling like leaving my body. And that would just start to happen spontaneously. And we lived on the edge of the forest, and I would wander into the forest and connect with nature and sit by the pond and meditate, even though I didn't have words for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time I got into beginning of university, I was starting to seek out someone who could explain those things and to help me go deeper. And being raised Christian, there was nobody in my church who could give me those answers. So I started seeking. And I looked at the Baha'i faith, I looked at Buddhism, but I stumbled into a yoga class, a meditation class with this woman, and she would read from her guru's book during meditation. And it was good stuff. It felt really resonant. I started to feel connection with like my heart chakra. I developed a daily meditation practice. And so the summer before my senior year, I went to their main ashram out in the Rocky Mountains and spent the summer doing yoga and meditation teacher training, met their guru, formally asked to be a student. And right away when I went back, started teaching for their center in Chicago. As soon as I graduated, moved in and spent 7 years there. And it was, in hindsight, very much a domination subjugation relationship where you gave over all of your power And you were told if you ever leave, your life will fall apart, and all the good things that come into your life and all the growth is by the grace of the guru, and couldn't see how much manipulation and how much control and fear they instilled in their devotees. And I remember about a year before I left, before I got thrown out, a year before I got thrown out, best thing that ever happened, one of their senior practitioners who'd been there for a couple decades said to me, don't you think it's interesting that nobody's graduated? Nobody's surpassed the teacher. Nobody's found enlightenment. And I, in hindsight, that is really one of the big things is ideally the people you're serving as a guide in the spiritual path, they should outgrow you. They should surpass you in different areas. And to constantly be kept in that state of subservience is a big red flag.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for telling me that story. I know it's so pathetic. I mean, imagine elementary school where instead of the teacher celebrating, wow, you like learned reading and writing at this level, it's like, go knock them dead in high school and college. Like, yay for you. Like, I'm proud of myself as a teacher because I helped you get to this point and now you're on and it was good to know you. Thank you. Instead, it's like you try to keep kids in sixth grade and train them to be afraid of the world. Yeah, don't go to high school. Don't go out into the world.
And all of this is because of me. You can read so well because I gift you that ability.
Yeah, I invented language and math and the world. I control the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad and then evil, really. That's what evil is. And so meditation schools are always falling into that because it's weird too that why are the teachers so insecure that they're afraid for people to graduate? Like real teachers, they love it when people surpass them. Like in the real world, the meditation world is quite backwards, in spite of the fact that there's a lot of smart people. The language is awful and the concepts are awkward because a lot of my teachers are monks.
Mm-hmm.
But I was lucky. My teacher said, like, see these robes? Like, I'm a monk from the Himalayas. Like, see your Hawaiian shirt? You're like a California surfer. Go take these teachings and translate them into a householder appropriate and people who live in the world. But the honest teachers in the meditation tradition say that it's basically just been going on for thousands of years. There'll be a beautiful meditation school, and at some point, the power mongers take over and make it overly complicated and baroque so they can dominate and control.
Yeah. It's one of those frustrating things. You and I were chatting about this in a phone call last week about secret teachings. How people will gatekeep, quote unquote, secret teachings to get you invested and to pay them money to whatever, to buy into their technique. When in reality, any spiritual truth is accessible to anyone, anywhere, if you become very quiet and just, as you said, savor the experience of the moment.
Yeah, if you become quiet and also if you become really wild. Because,
Yes.
we breathe in and we breathe out. Life is built around the pendulum swing, a swing between opposites. We're awake and then we're asleep to regenerate. And then the deeper we fall asleep, the more wide awake we can be. And if we don't sleep that well, then the next day we don't really quite feel awake.
Yeah. Beautifully said.
It's wild, the swing of opposites.
Yeah. I mean,
like dancing, you work out, dancing, having sex, listening to great music. This leads to great meditations.
Something that I bring up all the time is you look at the oldest temple we have on the earth right now, Göbekli Tepe, around 9,500 BCE, and there's statues of men masturbating in a temple structure.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah. There's 3 different ones that they found so far.
That's
and
really
for me,
funny.
it's like, well, of course it is. You can access altered states of consciousness through your sexual life. Of course. Why isn't that part of your spiritual journey?
Yeah. I was one of my friends is really loves Thich Nhat Hanh, who he calls TNH. And I was saying he's a living world treasure.
Yeah.
And he points to joyousness, like breathing in, joy out. Because for years, he said things like, walk like your feet are kissing the earth, walk like a tiger, walk like an emperor, clearly pointing to like rejoicing. And I was saying, well, for teenagers, meditation, if your meditation teacher is giving instructions, you want to make sure that it's okay to think anything. Because teenagers will start thinking about sex when they really come into their bodies and relax. they'll get turned on sometimes. And it's
Mhm.
really important to welcome that energy flow, because even that surge of electricity, a tingle, it activates the nerves and it makes meditation feel juicy.
Mhm.
And for everybody that's, I mean, maybe 90-year-olds don't need that, or maybe at some point it's obsolete or something. But for whenever that erotic charge happens, is to be celebrated. And if meditation is taught with this mood, like you're sitting in church, people will repress that. And then it makes meditation stagnation.
Yeah.
So not just sexuality, but the whole rock and roll feeling, thinking, listening to your favorite music, or recalling a time when you were stoned or on ayahuasca or LSD.
Sure.
It's celebrating all of your great experiences. Like just now, you were remembering a time when you were 7 when you awakened in a natural meditation. And in the back of the Radiant Sutras, I've got the Radiant Sutras. I'll say that when I'm listening to people in one-to-one sessions or even in groups, when I'll when they start clicking into their natural meditation states, they'll say, I used to do this when I was a kid.
Mhm.
I was at 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. I used to sort of fall into meditation spontaneously. And when they say that, I know that we found their authentic meditation practice to build
Yeah.
on. That's their foundation.
I think that's one of the amazing things on my journey of leaving a domineering spiritual teacher, was to give yourself permission to rediscover those things that are native to you that aren't quote
Yeah.
unquote spiritual techniques. Like even on this topic of masturbation as a spiritual practice, when I started as a kid through my adulthood, I've never really fantasized during sexual stimulation, solo sexual stimulation. It's always been for me a tuning into my body's energy and the pleasure and the flow of
Yeah.
energy. It is naturally for me a very meditative experience. And that's not something I ever gave myself to permission to even consider.
Yeah.
Until I stepped away from that tradition and gave myself, or was given this space to start exploring other advantages of what is spiritual work.
Well, congratulations on escaping in time. So you spent 10 years? How many years?
I lived there for 7. I was under his tutelage for almost a decade, and I got thrown out for defending their child who was trans, and they were attacking their child. So it's one of those things where I don't have any regrets about that.
Good for you. Yeah. So it turns out that there's predators in the spiritual world, just like in every field. And so it is like all those movies where
Yeah.
there's kidnappers, there's spiritual kidnappers and hostage takers. And so it's just like nature,
Yeah.
that there's predators and parasites everywhere.
And I would encourage everybody to, if you are somebody who is thinking of taking on a spiritual teacher, great. By all means, we all need guides from time to time, but trust your instincts. Because I remember when I met this community, when I was there for the first time, I had that thought, is this a cult? And I put it away because people told me, don't listen to that voice. I remember meeting the teacher's wife, and there was a voice in my head that loudly said, she's a witch, and not a good witch.
Yeah.
And I denied that. And had I had the wherewithal to just trust my own inner guidance, as opposed to getting distracted by, well, they have all these titles. They have all these titles. So clearly they must be a great spiritual teacher. Listen to yourself. Trust your inner guidance.
Yeah. I have a positive association with cults, kind of a weird thought. I don't have, I haven't written about this, but it's like I want to write uh, an essay about this for Facebook or something. That like I love cults, because the good part of being in a cult, it's like that feeling that this is my tribe.
Oh, yeah.
The joy of and mission, and there's like I know what life's all about, and like there's the fearless leader. There used to be this cartoon. It was before your time. It was in 1960. It was Rocky and Bullwinkle. They had these Russian spies, and there's
Natasha and Boris.
Natasha Boris. There's always a picture of fearless leader. There's always it's just like in fascist cults and communism. So I said picture of some guy on the wall and it's fearless leader. But it's like I have my fearless leader, and then there's the lieutenants. There's the hierarchy of people that are close to the guru, and then there's the cannon fodder or regular people.
I know it's a great feeling when
It's a
you're in
good
it.
feeling.
You feel powerful and righteous and all is right with the
Yeah.
world.
You feel powerful and righteous. Yeah, that's right. It's like how to have a good cult with freedom and a tribe, how to have a healthy tribe. Because their tribes are wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then how to knowing when to leave. It's like cults are great. It's like how to pick a good cult and like how to not ignore those feelings when something goes beep beep.
Yeah.
Like your your voice said she's a witch and not a good witch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like how to listen to our instincts, and then when it's time to go, how do I know when it's time to go? Like, okay, like time to go.
But to your point, I think we all need tribes. We need that feeling
Yeah.
of family and community and being,
Yeah.
you think, loved in your totality. Like that feeling of just, you're here, so we love you is so powerful. And as a society, we've lost that feeling of belonging. We've lost that feeling of true community. We've lost that feeling of our pack, our tribe. And also, too, there is an argument to be made that one of the most effective forms of leadership is not democracy, but a benevolent ruler. Somebody who is wise and just and empathic and leads for the good of all can be an effective leadership model. And so it appeals to something very primal in us. Unfortunately, there's also that other side that makes it very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. So with meditation groups, it's like at some point, they're going to become corrupt. I was part of some fantastic groups in the 60s, and some of them, as soon as they got a little bit popular and the teachers got a little bit of power, turned so evil. It's so fast. And some of them took longer, took years. And it's really like all spiritual teachers need to have some kind of really good therapist. There need to be therapists who could they could check in with, because the most amazing people that seem like they're enlightened, but then in action you see that, oh, they have a daddy problem. Like they're afraid to let their sons be powerful.
Yeah.
They're afraid to let their disciples be their equal or even surpass them, instead of
Yeah.
delighting in it. And so in this way, out in the everyday world, the coaches and the general intelligence is actually higher than that within spiritual circles. Let me give you an example. With singers or football players or pitchers in baseball, soccer players, they all have coaches, and yet we rarely hear of the coaches. I mean, they'll occasionally even thank them, but the coaches don't like push for Shakira or Beyonce or whoever the top singer of the time is. Who are some of the top singers these days?
Well, I'm a big Swiftie, so Taylor Swift is my girl.
Yeah. Taylor Swift has a voice coach, and her greatest thrill is that Taylor is thriving and rocking the world. And she doesn't push Taylor to say, when you receive an award, to thank me.
Yeah.
Like, it's enough that Taylor is thriving. And it's a challenge. Like the coaches do really technical, exacting work. One time I was driving across the Golden Gate Bridge. Camille was taking a workshop up there. And so I had this rental car, and it was tuned, turned on the radio, it was tuned to some popular station. And so it was, I don't know, 15 years ago. So I heard Rolling in the Deep.
Adele.
Who is that singer? Who is Adele? I heard it for the first time. So I'm driving across the bridge and I heard that voice. I said, oh my God, it's like an opera singer.
Yeah.
And within seconds, I could feel inside her voice the yearning to reach an entire like football stadium full of people and melt their hearts. I felt it.
Mm.
And then the next second, I said, oh my God, like the power wanting to come through her, like the God power, the soul power wanting to come through her. It's so powerful that she's going to injure her voice. And in a few years, she's going to have to cancel some tours. So I saw there's going to be entire tours, sold out tours that she's going to have to cancel and either rest her voice or get surgery. And it was about 10 years later, I happened to be reading some article like Adele just canceled 2 sold out tours. And then a few years later, I happened to read an article about this dangerous vocal surgery that quite a few singers secretly get by this one surgeon in France or something like that. Because when they book these tours, there's millions and millions of dollars at stake. And so they overuse their instrument. So what vocal coaches do is very precise. It's incredible. And it's supporting the performance. But we ordinarily never hear the coaches. The coaches, their whole joy in life is that their student is out there doing their dharma, giving their gift to the world. Actors have coaches, and sports, they have coaches. Now we do hear about, like, there used to be Phil Jackson was a famous, you know, but what football coaches and like team managers do, that we do sometimes hear about them, like they're a star in their own right. But there's these people that love to bring out the gift in their players. And their devotion, that's ethics. That's ethics, is wanting your student to surpass you. And we in meditation, it's letting your students be more enlightened than you are. Like, if a teacher had any enlightenment in their body at all, what they would want is for everybody around them to be rocking their own path of enlightenment and like, let's have this together. And even their greatest delight would be that their students are more enlightened than them. Anybody healthy at all, anybody with the slightest clue about what spirituality really is, what enlightenment is, they would want their students, everybody, to surpass them. They would actually be seeing that everybody's more enlightened than me in their own way. And that would be the highest delight.
A memory that's coming to the forefront for me is how in this tradition I was a part of, every sacred space, the guru had a throne. There was this dedicated special couch, chair, daybed thing specifically for them. And if you were a lower level person and you had to speak or teach, you would come up and sit on the floor. And if you were one of the higher level disciples or teachers, they'd put out a folding chair or something in front of the teacher's chair, but no one ever sat in the sacred seat. And what a message that sends of, you will never be at this level. You will never own this power in your own right.
What it is costume play, cosplay.
Yeah.
Cosplay is great. It's so much fun to dress up like Halloween or Mardi Gras or Carnival and just going to a club. It's like to dress up as a character. It's costume play. And there are people who would know better than to join a spiritual group who just, they see, oh, that's costume play. They're just like little kids dressing up. Like they go to the store and buy that $10 princess costume and the magic wand.
But you have to have a certain level of maturity to recognize that. And I think that's one of the hard things about these spiritual groups is they target people who are 18 to 22 years old who don't have those faculties yet. And then this becomes central to their identity. And then you defend it because your reality is based on it.
Yeah. So the world needs a lot of enlightened people running around. It needs it. And they're always getting kidnapped like you were and diverted into sort of being cannon fodder, just being fuel for the spiritual predator. So like what to do. But apparently this is the way of things. Like the stories I've heard from the meditation tradition is that like this just always happens.
Yeah. I'm very thankful that I got thrown out because I don't think I would have ever left.
Yeah. Thank God.
Right.
So there was one honest person there that said, you notice that nobody ever graduates. Whoever that, I wonder what happened to that person.
Oh, they're still living there. I looked them up the other day.
Interesting.
Still there.
Yeah. So, I occasionally, like, I'll be meditating and I'll just sort of shudder at close calls I've had, like what you're describing. And it's like, and also a sense of tragedy because I feel so many beautiful people that were teaching brilliant stuff. And then they fell into this trap of abusing power and they must know they're telling a lie. And they abused the trust. And I feel bittersweet sorrow, like grateful for the great stuff they taught. And then like how pathetic that you fell to such a depth.
I'd like to think that there isn't a nefarious knowledge of the deception, that people get caught up in their own mythos, that they believe the stories and that they've convinced themselves, because then at least you're not being malicious, you're just causing collateral damage.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
Yeah, one of my teachers had this very cheerful take on it that people basically they convince themselves that they're right, proper, and justified. Yeah, they're not. They don't know enough to know they're doing something harmful. Maybe
Yeah.
later, maybe on their deathbed or in their next lifetime,
Their life review afterwards.
they'll realize, oh man, I really blew it.
Yeah.
I was
But
lucky in when I, I was so young when I started. So from the time from 1968 into the 80s, I was basically always the youngest person in the room. Like everybody was older than me.
mhm.
Even most of my students were older than me. So, like when I in my teens, it would often happen that when one of these older teachers to me, somebody I looked up to, they would have gone through a cycle where they really thought they were this great stuff and then they blew it. I'd often have these conversations where I'd be at some point everybody else would leave and I'd be sitting there with one of these senior teachers and they just say, "Kid, don't let this happen to you." I thought I was really like on a throne and man, did I blow it. And they would tell me about it, like, don't let this happen to you. Just
Oh,
keep on being yourself. Yeah, I got to see a lot of people that I looked up to. They were giving me just brilliant teachings, just sort of crash and not necessarily crash and burn, but just crash and get bruised because just fell for their own bullshit. They lost their humanity.
I frequently think that I am protected in some ways by the fact that, given that so much of what I deal with regarding spirituality includes dealing with people's sexual energy, that I live a very quiet and private life. I don't get invited to conferences. I don't get big brand deals. I don't get invited on major platforms because what I discuss and how I show up is a little too taboo. And so most of the work I do is sitting alone in my apartment with my husband, chatting with people online, occasionally
Mhm.
hosting retreats or in-person things, but mostly it's just me by myself. And so I feel in some ways protected from getting caught up in my own bullshit or the stories around me because I'm not being invited into those spaces. And I think that's ultimately a very good thing.
Do you have any desire to be more active as a meditation teacher?
Well, I mean, that's what I do. Like, that's what I do with my clients and at my retreats.
Mhm.
Uh,
Because of what you've been through, I think it'd be great. And the terror will be, to learn to accept the projections and the flow of power and just use it well.
yeah, I do.
Basically, basically just the flow of power, like thank you for honoring me as your teacher. And then you just
I'll let it go.
you let it flow back to the student.
Yeah.
It flows in a circle.
I'm immensely grateful for having had that experience of abuse with this person who calls himself a guru, because in some ways it feels a little bit like an inoculation. Like it
Yeah,
feels a little
it
bit
is
like
an
having gone through
inoculation.
that.
Yeah. But they like your realization about the spirituality and sexuality, it's really important, especially for everybody under the age of 50 and even older, to realize the beauty and the divine feelings in sexual impulse
Yeah,
and celebrate that and include that.
yeah,
The sexual desire, the pulse, it usually comes as a wave there for, X number of seconds or minutes. It's just a surge and then there'll be a trough and then a surge again.
yeah,
And then the electricity flows everywhere. And
yeah,
the joy, we could actually just think of meditation as a way of prolonging and intensifying the joy of sex.
yeah.
Just, yeah. Because I was watching somebody eat chocolate the other day and it was kind of a hard chocolate, and this kid was just crunching on it. And like you can't take when chocolate crunches, you don't taste anything. It's letting it melt. If you just savor it, I don't
Mm,
want to say slow down because that's overused. It's
yeah,
let's quite say you slow down and you let it melt and hit you. That's where the pleasure is. And sex is like that. I mean, it can be over once in a while, like quick sex can be great, but mostly it's lingering and letting the desire and electricity build and build and build until you feel like fuses are going to blow and then let the
yeah,
fuse.
yeah,
It's so psychedelic.
yeah,
It's such an awesome communion with the life force.
yeah. And which I think most people are oblivious to.
Yeah. And yet everybody pretty much wants to have more pleasure from sex.
Yeah,
And it really is redemptive.
yeah,
And it's the same thing. It's taking more pleasure from breathing, more
Yeah.
pleasure from light touch, more pleasure from deep touch, more pleasure from the touch of light touching the back of our eyes, more pleasure from sound, the sound of a voice, the sound of the wind, sound of nature, the sound of music touching the earth. Being here with all senses alive, receiving the delight, receiving the intensity. Yeah.
And I think so many people are seeking greater pleasure, greater stimulation purely externally. Like, let me have a more intense experience or a new partner or a more intense, kink to explore. And not that those things are wrong by any means, but learning to appreciate that the joy you're seeking is already here.
Yeah. And also, one of the great gifts of meditation is rejoicing in tiny, rejoicing in the quiet and the subtle. To enjoy sex, we need to be able to really appreciate like a light touch. Like I'm not into the kinks at all, but I noticed on TV, I've been watching, what is it, 1923 prequel to Yellowstone. And so they have a lot of bondage and domination going on. So they have people tied up. And then in Billions, I love this TV show Billions, and they have that the people are tied up, and some female yoga teachers I know, there was this fad a couple of years ago where they would pay a lot of money to have a guy tie them up, and in that, people being tied up and then somebody else has a feather and is tickling them, so they're being forced to be there with tiny sensations and being teased. And meditation is just like that. If we sit or lie down to meditate, anytime we're quiet, there's a range of sensory experiences, from teeny tiny experiences like the breath touching, the mantra vibrating inside, the tiny touch of electrical currents flowing in the body. And this feels as intense as being at a concert.
Yeah.
And so we're retrieving the full range.
Yeah.
It's this frees us up from the need to get more and more pounded by stimulation. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's that we don't want to lose our ability to appreciate a tiny.
Well, it's also, in Ayurveda, they discuss the sense organs as they become saturated. That's why you practice in the yogic tradition, pratyahara, turning your senses within to give them a chance to desaturate from the stimulation.
Exactly. It's like we want to retrieve our ability to be totally delighted with the tiny taste. If I don't have any chocolate in the house, I'll have around 2 p.m, I'll just get restless and I'll go walk a mile even to that store that has some to get some. And then it's so funny though, because if I do have good chocolate in the house, a bar can last for months because I just need to know that it's there. And every once in a while, I'll go over and take a little bite and let it melt on my tongue. So I'm completely satisfied with small amounts of chocolate. Like, even if there's just a bar on top of the refrigerator, like I know that it's there. But it's like, if I don't have some in the house, I'll go and search it. So it's a gift of meditation that I'll think of chocolate and I'll feel it's like a mantra, and I'll feel the joy of it. And then the other day I was eating something like this, a perfect chocolate bar, but I still felt like that urge to like chew it, and the impatience, and so I had to lean a little bit, like make myself let it melt on my tongue to really savor it. It's always a choice. It's a little bit of a tease, leaning into being tickled, to let the taste explode. Like, let a small taste be psychedelic, because it's a surrender. When we let our senses be open to receive something, a touch, a piece of music, a delicious taste, it carries us away. It's a moment of being stoned, being drunk, of being blown away, of being astounded, of being carried into, oh my God, that's amazing. And so we could say it's a surrender or a dissolving. So we have to be willing to be enchanted. And that is the gift of meditation, is exercising, like retrieving our ability to be enchanted by the thought of something, or the taste. A little taste of something is psychedelic. Yeah. Well,
And
let's talk again soon.
I love this always, Lorin.
Yeah, it's so good to see you.
It's wonderful to see you, my dear sir. It's an honor to receive your wisdom, to reflect some of your light back at you. It's a pleasure to connect.
Yeah. Okay, Kaylin, so good. Thank you so much.